we have another Parsha that is jam-packed. And so I'm curious what we are all going to learn together. And I will turn it over to you, Rabbi.
All right. Hello, everyone. Good morning, Boker Tov. Um, yeah, it's so wonderful to see everyone. It's so wonderful to be in this space. I don't think I've been with you for Parsha study in a while, so I'm very, very excited um, to be learning with you. So I'm going to jump right in because, as Myra said, this is jam-packed. I love these parshiot, the jam-packed ones. So let's start with our blessing over the Torah study. And it's funny, I one time that I was with you, someone was very unhappy, I think, in the chat about blessing over Torah study. But like, God forbid we bring God into our Torah study, which itself actually feels very Talmudic. But I get back down such practices because I feel like this is literally why I am here. I have blessed God and God has blessed me, and blessing happens to be the topic of what we're going to be learning about today. And I also want to down the we say give the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps this person just didn't know that there's actually three blessings that we say over Torah study, and usually we just say one, the lasok b'divrei Torah. But I like to say two of the three because that second one I feel like is where all the good stuff is, just like the Shema. So let us begin with blessing. I invite you to prepare your heart and get yourself ready to receive whatever you're going to receive blessing. You might want to ask yourself why you're here. In the East Coast, it's 10:33. You could be getting ready to watch The Price is Right or something equally important. Why are you here? Is it a desire to learn? Is it a desire for connection? Is it a feeling of obligation? Is it a desire for something new? What are you hoping to have by the end of our time together? New insights, a question to chew on over Shabbat, an answer to a question that you've always had about this parsha. Whatever it is, just hold it in your heart. And I promise the Torah lesson has already started. We're not off track. Feel free, if you like, to close your eyes. Feel free to say amen to my blessings that I'm about to make, or you can add your own words. You're on mute, so only Hashem can hear you anyways. All right. And we shall bless. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We get to bless God for allowing us to soak in these words of Torah. Va'arevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu. God, may these words be sweet in our mouths that we're about to explore. And Arev also means a guarantor. So, God, may these words be stood on. May they come true. May we come to live a life of this Torah and live in a world where this Torah is true. Uh, May we and our descendants, and our descendants be our children from our bodies, children that we teach, adults that we teach, mentees, anyone who looks to us for wisdom. May we be kulanu yodei shemecha and lomdei Toratecha. May we all have some sort of knowledge of God's name, whatever that means. And we know from our own names, we play different roles. So may we have some relationship with the divine. And May we all be studiers of this Torah, of this way of life, of this source of guidance. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. Blessed are you, God, who blesses us when we struggle to understand. That's the root of Yisrael, is that struggle, and make sense of it. God, teach us Torah through the struggle. Show us Torah through our lives and our experiences as a reward for engaging in this struggle. Amen. All right. Yay, let's get it. Okay. So this week's Torah is Re'eh. Look, see. And I recently learned at a Torah retreat, which there are such things, that one way of deeply connecting to the Parsha is to sit with the first few words of the Parsha, and that gives you the flavor of the entire Parsha. Or I should say, it could create the kavanah, the intention with which you move forward into Torah study. So let's look at the opening bits of this Parsha. I'm going to share my screen for you. All right. Here we go. So it starts. Anochi noten lifnechem hayom bracha uklala. See, this day I set before you blessing and curse. Now, what does that mean? Blessing, if you obey the commandments of your God, Yod He Vav He. Oh, whoops, I forgot to take out the name of God from the English. And curse if you do not obey the commandments of your God, but turn away from the path that I enjoin upon you this day and follow other gods whom you have not experienced. Right? And this is so powerful for a couple of reasons. One, it's so important to understand the context of Devarim, of Deuteronomy. So we're on the steps of Moab, right? We're about to go into the promised land. Yay. But what's also really important, even though we've been reading this narrative, what's important to remember is this is not the generation of the Exodus. Right? So like this idea of experiencing God, of knowing God, we just made a bracha that like we should all be able to know God. This is a very different relationship than the people who were enslaved, than the people who were at the sea when it split, than the people who were standing at Sinai. Right? Even though in our heads we're thinking that's the Torah, that's not the book of Deuteronomy. So the way that this generation knows and experienced God is very different than when we think of the God of the Torah. Um, then we have the next part. Um, when your God brings you into the land that you're about to enter and possess, you shall pronounce blessing at Mount Gerizim and the curse at Mount Eval. Both are on the other side of the Jordan, beyond the west road that is in the land of the Canaanites who dwell in the Arava, near Gilgal by the terebinths of Moreh. For you are about to cross the Jordan to enter and possess the land that your God is assigning you. When you have occupied it and are settled in it, dot, dot, dot. Oops. Where did... Oh, I lost a verse. 32. Let me grab it. Where's my... I think this is not the source sheet that I meant to use, but that's okay. We roll with the perfections and the imperfections. It says, be careful about observing all the hukim u mishpatim, all of the rules and the laws that I am presenting to you today. And that's really important. We'll come back to that. Okay. So this parsha, as we just talked about, I'm going to stop sharing for one moment. This parsha that we just talked about is absolutely chock full of mitzvot. There are 17 positive mitzvot. There are 38 prohibitions. And some of the really interesting ones that I think help us as we think about like these opening words and, this charge of this possibility of both blessing and curse. And what do these words mean? Don't be lured to Lured, lured to follow in the ways of the people who were about to drive out from the land. Don't add to this Torah. Let it be. Once the canon is closed, canon meaning Deuteronomy in this case, once the book is closed, don't add to it. Don't, try to make it better. Like, for instance, we don't need 2 days of Shabbat, right? Like don't change the rules in any way. Just do this. Beware of false prophets. Beware of idol worship. And we bring this into the 21st century. What are these idols? Here are the foods that we don't eat. Be a holy people. Am Segula. It's my favorite part of the Torah. And then it goes into the rules of how we care for the socially marginalized and how we observe the holidays. Okay. Then there's a classic debate. So I should say, that's all of Parshat Re'eh. That's like the whole Torah. What else is there except for, what else is there? These are the rules that we need. And then there's a classic debate about these opening words and what's really going on here. Okay. So we just read this piece. I'll share my screen again. I like to give you a heads up because it can be sometimes a little disorienting when the screen goes on and off. We have all of this, I'm about to give you this day, Hayom, this blessing and this curse, and here's what's going to happen. Then you're going to go into the land and you're going to do this ritual, which is actually talked about, more in depth further on in Parshat Ki Tavo. But then the rabbis say, but wait, but if we're not doing it today, then why does it say today? Right? Like this is not what we're covering in this Torah portion. So why are we talking about it here? And why does it specifically say today? Because obviously we know that the Torah, when it means something, it's going to say something, right? There are so many different words that the Torah can use to express ideas. So it's saying this here. So obviously it must mean something here. That's one question. And then another question that comes up is, I'm setting before you blessing and curse. And if you do this, then God will bless you. If you don't do this, then God will curse you. And the rabbis were like, whoa, whoa, whoa. We learn over in Bereshit Rabbah 51:3 that no evil thing will come from God. So how can the Torah be saying right now that God is going to curse us? What? Okay. I think these are both really good questions. And I think the response to the first one of like, what's going on with this mountain? We know the story, right? Of like, you get to the mountains and then half of them are on this side, half of them are on this side, and all the blessings are over here and all the curses over here, and it's echoing through the valley. We know that, Parshat Ki Tavo. Why are we reading about this right now? What is this? What is the purpose of this foreshadowing? I find it meaningful whenever, and our tradition also, but me too, find it meaningful when we encounter the word Hayom, it's talking to us also, us wherever we are today, right? So there's some power behind this word Hayom to help us and empower us to make sure that this remains Torah Chaim, to make sure that this remains Torah as guidance for our lives, right? And so that automatically signals to me what is in here that I need to take into my life today. Because if we're not doing that actively, then it becomes a relic, right? Then it becomes just something that we do, something that we read, but not something that we apply. So this Hayom brings me into this story. And I can be sure I'm going to come away with something now that I can apply. And two, this no evil thing comes from God. So what are you talking about with the language of curse? Luckily, this question was addressed a long, long time ago at the time of the Second Temple with Onkelos, the translation of Onkelos. who, when he translated the word, could have used the Aramaic word for curse, but in fact chose not to and chose to use the word chilufa. And a chilufa is a substitute. So instead of saying, see, I set this day before you blessing and curse, it's more understanding is, see, I set before you this day a blessing and a substitute. What does that mean? And how do I apply that to life? All right, let's go through that. So, what's powerful and feels powerful as we're looking at this very first word, it's see. And as I just said, right, the Torah has all kinds of ways of saying different things. It could say no, right? Da. We see that oftentimes when we need to be like intellectually aware of something or understand. We see havein, right? The Torah is telling us to see. That's something. We're being called to envision something. And I think it's very, really interesting because I often say, the Torah is given and written in human language, right? So the Torah is made for humans. We have this beautiful midrash about the angels being like, why don't we have a Torah? It's like, you don't need it. The humans do, right? We need the Torah. So in our language, as humans, we are easily tempted by our eyes. We follow our eyes, right? We just read a couple of times ago. That's why we have tzitzit, right? It says, Lo taturu acharei einechem. Don't follow after your eyes. That will lead you to destruction. In fact, even in this parsha, it's like tear down everything that belongs to the other. You have to get rid of it. Don't see it. Don't whatever. And it's like we are just so led by our eyes. Think about ads on television. I'm always talking about this with my daughter, who's 8.5. Like when you see those commercials for like burgers or whatever, and like it's like they're juicy and the cheese, it's obviously not kosher. The cheese is just like globbing down. And then you see the behind the scenes and like they're made to look so appealing. They put glue in the cheese and it's like disgusting. But the whole point is to look appealing because we follow our eyes. If marketing executives know this, the Torah surely also knows this for a fact. So, re'eh, if this thing that I'm about to say becomes the thing in front of your eyes, the thing that you see, the thing that you follow, that you're attracted to, you'll be golden because you're human and you will follow it. So I need for you to see the following. And then we have three really important takeaways that we need to understand about how this Torah portion is shaped that we must hold on to in context of who the Israelites are at this point in time and where they are and what they're about to do. The first thing is a substitute is not the thing itself, right? The substitute is something that comes in. So I'm going to come back because I'm going to skip this because I'm going to come back to it at a later date or, in like 10 minutes. So in terms of a substitute, I want to present this story of a farmer. And I thought it was a Jewish story. I feel like I've heard it in Jewish contexts, but I couldn't find it. So here it is from the internet. It still it still supports our point. A farmer story. Once upon a time, there was a farmer whose horse ran away. That evening, all of her neighbors came around to commiserate. They said, "We are so sorry to hear your horse has run away. This is so unfortunate." And the farmer said, "Maybe." The next day, the horse came back. Yay! Bringing 7 wild horses with it. And in the evening, everybody came back and said, "Oh my gosh, that's so great. What a great turn of events. You have 8 horses." And the farmer again said, "Maybe." The following day, her son tried to break one of the horses while riding it, and he was thrown and he broke his leg. Oi! And the neighbors said, "Oh, dear, that's too bad." And the farmer responded, "Maybe." The next day, the conscription officers came around to conscript people into the army, and they rejected her son because he had a broken leg. Again, all the neighbors came around and said, "Oh, isn't that great?" And again, she said, "Maybe." First of all, it's amazing. This farmer lives in such a community where people just come by. Everybody comes by every day. How wonderful. We should all be blessed with such supportive community. But the main takeaway here is that sometimes things are a substitute. We haven't yet arrived at where we're going. So, blessing, curse, who knows? And this middle ground of maybe leaves us open to decide how we are going to move forward. Oi, can you imagine the first thing? Oh no, this is so terrible. What am I going to do? If she had responded that it was a catastrophe, how would that have changed things? Oh, this thing is so great. Maybe. If she responded and like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, how would that have changed things? And vice versa. So it allows us to see things both as potential good, potential harm, and to just not jump to a final conclusion, to take the path of maybe. That's one thing. The second thing that we need to hold in front of our eyes is this power within us that we have to manifest. And I love the concept of bracha, which I have learned from Rabbi Yosef Chikatilia's book Sha'arei Ora. And I can't remember if I've taught about this here before, but if I have, hopefully you'll pull something new out. And if I have not, great, because I love this text. This is like my favorite text. I love this book. It is an exercise in taking all kinds of words from the Torah and mapping them onto the Kabbalistic tree of life to show how all of these words actually highlight different emanations, different energies, different faces, if you will, of divine experience. And ties back into my understanding of the opening Torah blessing, but that we should all be Lomdei Shmecha, right? That we should all be, Yod-E Shemecha, that we should all be knowers of God's name. And this text, Chikatilia's text, says that God has a whole bunch of names, just like we all have many different names that we're called by. You know, mother, rabbi, teacher, neighbor, all of these things. And they mean different things in different relationships. And then different people understand us differently, correct? So Chikatilia is saying the same thing is true of the Holy Blessed One, of the divine. And so one of these names for God that tells us something about how God operates in the world is bracha. Bracha is from the language of brecha, which means pool, summarily appropriate. The four-letter name of blessing, which brings down all kinds of abundance and emanation into the name of Adonai. It is like all the storehouses of a king and all the varieties of his riches go and are collected in that name. And I often say it's like, understanding it as like the Amazon warehouse of warehouses, right? Like anything ever that you could ever ask for is stored in this brecha that we have access to in the form of bracha. Okay. Adonai is like the pool, the brecha, into which everything flows. And in it, there's enough for everything. In the Torah, this aspect is called bracha because bracha is the language of brecha. I think these rabbis are so brilliant in their word plays and how words sound like each other. They share a root. They must be connected. This is the name, this being Yod He Vav He, and bracha is the name through which Yaakov Avinu, our father, peace be upon him, blessed his sons, since he inherited from Yitzchak Avinu, and Yitzchak inherited from Abraham, and the Holy Blessed One gave it to Abraham as a way of opening the storehouses of Yod He Vav He, meaning as a way to access all of the goodness that the universe has on reserve for all of us just to come and place an order. So it says here, this was available for Abraham to take for himself, but also for all of the children of the world, right? For everybody. This is the secret of Genesis 12 too. Love it. I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing. It doesn't say you're going to be blessed. It says you will be a blessing. You will have this power because it's been passed to your hands, right? Take whatever you want and give it freely, right? And that's why we also have this power to bless because it has been passed down to us, right? And like, how do we get it? I cut out a huge part of this because it's while it's incredibly fascinating, I absolutely love it. I wanted to get to Moshe Rabbeinu, but it goes from Abraham to Yitzchak, to Yaakov, to Yosef, to the tribes, to Moshe, right? It's like everyone gets it. And then it keeps going ad hayom hazeh, right? It keeps going down through all of us. With this same blessing, Moshe Rabbeinu blessed Yisrael before they entered the land, right? And even though it's specifically citing here Devarim 33, which is Vizot HaBracha at the end of the Torah, um, what we learn from how Jikatilia parses the Torah is that, but these things are true also when we encounter the words at all times, right? So here we are, Moses saying, I am giving you right now this bracha. And, the connection that I made is in the same way that, you know, Moses was like, here's this thing that you're going to do at the mountains, at the two mounts, but that's really foreshadowing. We're going to deal with that later on in Parashat Ki Tavo. Moses was saying in the same way, I'm going to give you this bracha. Not until the end, not until I'm about to die, because that's when everyone did it anyways, right? Like Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov. But I'm going to give you this power of bracha, uklala, and curse. And so we're going to have to figure out what this means. And that's part of what Parshat Re'eh is doing. Curse in the sense of substitute. Because I really like that Uncleist translation of like, we don't know if it's good or bad. We're just moving forward. So this is the blessing which Moshe, Ish Elohim, blessed Bnei Israel before he died. Right? And we find that the name of Adonai is the foundation of this blessing. This idea of brecha is the foundation of the blessing. And this blessing enriches those who cling to it without sadness, concern, or worry. And that's the farmer story. Without sadness, concern, or worry. It's just a maybe. And we see that reflected in Proverbs 10:22. The blessing of Adonai enriches and concern adds nothing. If she had said, "Oy, oy, oy, my son broke his leg. What am I going to do? Let me run around and do that." The text is saying concern adds nothing. We just stay chill and look for the next right thing. I love this. That is the idea of maybe. So, I think it's important that we have these gifts of brecha and this power of vision because we need to envision the end goal. We need to have a sense of where we're going, what our purpose is, and how we want to get there. And again, this context matters, right? The Israelites are on the steppes of Moab. They're about to go into the promised land, and they're about to take on a huge, huge responsibility, right? To be a people, to have space to themselves. The Torah then goes on to say, tear down everything that was and be different, see different. And then once we see differently, we need to manifest the world we see, the world that we envision. So Moses says, today, I am giving you the choice of blessing, the choice to manifest goodness, and the choice to see it as a curse, or the choice to see it as a maybe, as a stop along the road towards blessing. And this Torah will be a guide to living on the side of bracha. Because what is this Torah telling us? Let me scroll up to some of the things I wanted to highlight. Oh, I didn't add all the things. Well, I have citations for you. So the first thing is this very important thing of not to be lured away, right? Like, don't think that there's a different path or an easier path. This is the path for us that we should be taking. And here's why. Um, be aware, be on guard of false prophets, people who come to say, maybe you should see differently. I'm actually seeing it a different way in like a leave behind the truth that you know. Don't worship idols, right? Like that is like the foundational message of our Torah, right? Don't try to find other gods. Don't give your life to them. Forbidden foods. Here are some ways that we can maintain holiness in our bodies because we are supposed to be holy. Again, in verse 14, an am segula, a chosen, a treasured. I like to call it a purple people. But, we are supposed to be different because we're seeing differently, we're being differently. And we need to care for the socially marginalized. And that means a lot. When we have power, we might forget, but that's necessary. And lastly, in this parsha is a list of the chagim, because that's our story, that's our history, that's our myth, that's our narrative. So already in the Torah, which is our grand story, it's like, don't forget the stories. This is very important for us to be able to walk this path of bracha, this path of blessing, and this path of understanding that that path seems to wind through things which may seem like they're not good in this moment. But ultimately, if we're doing the next right thing, we'll get towards a place of goodness. So I want to conclude. I'm so proud of myself. I never saved time for us to actually talk at the end, but worked very hard for it today. But I want to conclude with um, our connection to Elul, which we're coming up on the month right before the high holidays, from my favorite book. This is real. This is real, and you are completely unprepared. The Days of Awe as a Journey of Transformation by Rabbi Alan Liu, Alav Shalom. And he writes in response to Parashat Re'eh and looking at how all of the parshiot of Elul inform our journey of transformation. I want to say transportation. We are being transported towards tshuva. Our journey of transformation and how we can make deeper meaning of these things in this month. He says, look, I put before you this day a blessing and a curse. So begins Parshat Re'eh, the weekly Torah portion we read as the month of Elul begins. Look, pay attention to your life. Every moment in it is profoundly mixed. Every moment contains a blessing and a curse. Everything depends on our seeing our lives with clear eyes, seeing the potential blessing in each moment, as well as the potential curse, choosing the former, forswearing the latter. So I offer all of that as we stand on, I feel like the steps of Moab are like the steps of Elul, as we stand on this precipice of tshuva and figuring out how do we see differently, be differently, do differently. Hopefully this is a meaningful takeaway for your Shabbos and your Elul and your 5786 and all of that. So yay, we finally have like 10 minutes for comments and questions and conversation.
Lovely. As always, our chat is its own course. its own
Sweet.
learning. But we have a hand raised. So we have a few hands raised. So we'll take them one at a time.
Thank you, Rabbi. I have a problem. I feel that I don't have the power to make those choices.
Hmm.
Is there, am I wrong
What sort of choices?
between seeing things as a blessing or a curse? I feel like the outcome is determined not by my choice.
Mm.
I think that's really interesting. Um, I feel like my belief, which is not static, because I'm a constant learner, is that our realities are shaped by our perceptions. So, trying the exercise, and I think this is the beauty of a lot of Hasidic literature, is trying something on. Actually, even our oldest traditions say, like, for instance, if we don't believe in God, we're supposed to act as if, right? So, trying out the practice of what if I do have some control in this situation? What if I can make this choice? I'm gonna I'm gonna act as if I can and seeing what comes from that. Just as an exercise of learning. Um, yeah, that feels very um real and like an authentically Jewish question and practice.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to Julius.
Um, how can I say this? This whole Torah study was beautiful, and I got a chance to see something that I've never seen before because I've read Rohi multiple times. And how can I say this? The way you brought it out, we have to see differently. We have to see things differently. We can't just stay in the box that we've always been. And we have to allow God to open our minds up to see his way of thinking and not ours.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's true. And I think relatedly, being willing to have that change and being willing to see differently. I think that is a huge power that we have.
Hey, Kathy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. So interesting, Rabbi. This just reminds me about the both and of life. You talk about blessings and curses. There's so much that goes on that we have no control over. There's a randomness that happens in life that sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes it's a curse. But the choice we have is how we navigate through the both and of life, the blessing part and the curse part, because we're going to have both in life. So I'm just learning how to navigate through it. And I think it's just, like you said, having the faith to be able to move forward.
Mm, yeah, thank you.
We're getting some more comments in the chats. More comments in the chat. Uh, but I would love for folks to uh, say their questions and their comments in their own words. I don't always uh, do justice to what you all write. So we still have 5 minutes. And Rabbi, just so you have some time to think through it, I have been asking our Torah study leaders to conclude with a bracha or an intention for our Shabbat. So as
Mm,
we go to these last two questions, please know I will be putting you on the spot. Um,
okay.
so first we'll go to Gail.
Okay. Rabbi, hi. We're neighbors. I live in Wayland. And, hi. And I just wanted to ask your advice. This is such a beautiful study, but when we wake up and when we're seeing darkness instead of light, what do you suggest?
Mm, mm, I love that. When we're seeing darkness. instead of light. I think, we learned from the beginning of Bereshit that darkness is the state, right? And then Yehi Or, and then there was light. So I think that speaks to, someone else said Emunah, right? To have this, to respond with a place of faith, a trust that there is light and light is coming. It's a practice. What do we say? It's darkest before dawn, which, we see. There can't be, darkness or darkness without light, or the dark helps us appreciate and differentiate from the light. And I think it is about holding on to that hope. Because if we don't, we're just like, what's the alternative? Would be to, sink into a pit of despair, which that is not what we do. Like that, everything in our tradition says we fight, we stand up, we cultivate that little bit of light. Even David Melech, was blowing. We talk about like the Psalms in the darkness, where it's just like blowing on this one little ember to just light that fire in the night. So we need to hold on to hope and strain our eyes, if we must, to see the coming light.
And of course, that's always easier said than done, but I find joining together in this way can lead us there.
And I think, Mara, related to that, in that farmer story, what as of note is that the community kept coming. So it is very hard to do. And that's the beauty of community. That's the beauty of leaning in and being with other people. Virtual community is community. I know some people are like, oh, but I want to be whatever kind of community you're in. It makes it easier. It's much easier to hope and to hold on to hope in a group than it is by ourselves.
And before we turn it over to Joan, I'm just sharing my email in the chat because this space is so wonderful and it's also only 45 minutes a week. And so if you're looking for other ways to tap in, we have them. So I will now turn it over to you, Joan.
Thank you. Oh, somehow my screen keeps shifting so that I can't see you. There we go. It's hard to condense what I have going on in my mind, but shall we say that I'm a poet, and one of the books that I started to write, it was entitled "We See the Truth, to See the Truth Differently," and I want to problematize the word truth, and this as someone who's been studying Judaism since I was 6 and happy to be a Jew and very devoted to the Torah in so many ways that it can be looked at. And so now I'm asking us to take a look at how thinking we have the light for the nations, thinking we have the truth with a capital T, it could be leading us in ways of, shall we say, contention in the world in so many ways. Think about the layers of that. It's hard to condense it, but I want to ask, Rabbi, if you've ever thought about how I loved your enthusiasm today. I enjoyed the talk, and somehow every time the word truth came up, I started wondering, how can we walk amongst the nations with this great big banner of light? And chosenness, how many times over my lifetime, 73 years, have I heard issues people take with this concept that we think we have the truth, and that we have to light other people's way and guide them. So would you just have any sort of, I'm here to, I guess I'm here to ask us all to look at even the Chinese, it's a Chinese story, all bad leads to good and all good leads to bad. What circle is that taking us in when we think we've got the way out?
I love that question. I deal with it a lot with my young ones. when they ask me, is the Torah true? And I think that I hear what you're saying. It's so hard to condense thoughts. Um, all truth is subjective. And I think when we start with from that place, then we're on a good footing, which means our truth is a reflection of our experiences, right? And like that, we all have different truths. We have lived experiences. But the Torah, be it true or not true, like, did Moses exist? I don't know. Like, is that true in that kind of way? The Torah is capturing truths, and there are truths about humanity, right? We see jealousy in the Torah. That is a truth. We see sibling rivalry, we see murder, we see peacemaking, we see gossip, all of these truths of the human experience. And I think what the Torah is delivering the truths of the human experience, because like I said, like it's human language, and it's a guide for us to help navigate this human experience. I think beyond that, and I also think, there are things that we learn not to do from the Torah. And like that is also a human experience and a truth that gets carried with us. But I think in our 21st century realities, that is how we hold up the truth of human experiences.
Thank you so much. And we are 2 minutes over time.
Sorry.
Joan, send me an email and I will get your response to Rabbi Tiferet. And if you could just close us off with a short bracha, I know I and many people here would appreciate it.
Absolutely. In the spirit of Chikatilia, in the spirit of everything that we desire being available to us in some way, once we're able to properly and clearly name what that desire is, I want to bless you all with the ability to reach into this brecha of bracha and be able to pull out for yourselves whatever it is you are longing and looking for this Shabbos, this coming year. And if it's not immediate, that you have a trust that it is coming and that the path you are walking is leading you there.
Amen. Thank you so much, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbos.